Hi, it's me again, Gary, and I want to tell you something today. Something that took me an embarrassingly long time to admit out loud, even to myself. When we finally retired from working, we had Social Security. We had a house that was mostly paid off, and we had a very small savings account at the local bank. That was it. That was the entire picture. Any financial planner in a nice suit would have looked at our numbers. They would have told us we were completely out of our minds for stopping work. They probably would have been right. The math was not exactly impressive, I know that. I am not an idiot. I could see the numbers on the paper. And I spent the entire first year of my retirement completely terrified. I was watching the budget like a hawk. I would sit at the kitchen table with a calculator and a yellow notepad. I was tracking every single dollar. Every single time we went to the grocery store, I felt this tight knot in my stomach. I would look at the price of ground beef. I would look at the price of coffee. I would stand there comparing the store brand to the name brand for 5 minutes. Because we were officially on a fixed income now, the money simply wasn't coming in the way it used to. Not like when I ran my exterior painting business. When I was working, if we needed extra money, I just took on an extra job. I worked a weekend. I gave up a holiday. I couldn't do that anymore. My knees wouldn't let me. I thought the whole goal of retirement was to somehow maintain the exact same life we had before. I thought if we weren't buying new things, we were failing. If we weren't upgrading the house, we were slipping behind. I kept thinking about how we were going to keep up. Keep up with who? I don't even know. Maybe the neighbors. Maybe my brother-in-law. Maybe just some idea I had in my own head. But that feeling was there constantly, heavy and real. It felt like we were suddenly playing a game we were mathematically guaranteed to lose, because the numbers just do not work. You cannot live a working man's life on a retired man's check. You spend all your energy worrying about stuff, and that tension just sits there in your living room, heavy and uncomfortable. You wake up in the morning and you look out at the garage. You see all these things you bought over the last 40 years, things you worked overtime to pay for. You missed baseball games to pay for those things. You see the heavy power tools. You see the extra lawn equipment. You see the second refrigerator running out there for no reason at all, just keeping a few cans of cheap soda cold. And suddenly, looking at all that stuff feels incredibly heavy. Not good weird, just weird. You realize you traded years of your actual life for things that are just collecting dust right now. And the fear really sets in, the very specific fear that you are going to run out of savings, because you haven't learned how to turn off that consumer switch in your brain. You worry you are going to spend your last dime on a new gadget you barely use, or a bigger television you don't actually need because the old one works perfectly fine. You wake up realizing your old spending habits are going to ruin the time you have left. Now, I'm not going to give you a 5-step system. I'm not selling a course on anything. I don't have a worksheet for you to download. I'm just going to tell you what happened to us and what we finally figured out when we stopped trying to want so much. So we're at the local hardware store. It was a Tuesday morning in late October. I remember the month because it was starting to get cold outside. I drove my truck there just out of habit. I didn't even need anything specific. I was just walking the aisles. I was standing in the tool aisle staring at this brand new air compressor. It was a nice one. It was $350. I had the money in my checking account. Barely, but it was there. And I was standing there under the bright fluorescent lights, convincing myself I absolutely needed it. Because when I ran my exterior painting crew, I always needed good equipment. My old compressor was getting loud. It was rattling. It was leaking air from the hose. I had my hand on the heavy cardboard box. I was ready to wrestle it into the cart, and Diane walked over from the garden section. She had a packet of tomato seeds in her hand. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at the box. And then she looked at me. She asked what exactly I was going to use it for. I started rattling off projects like I was defending myself in traffic court. I told her I was going to strip the back deck, paint the storage shed, maybe do some work on Kevin's house. Kevin is our oldest boy. He lives about 20 minutes away. She just nodded slowly. Then she said, "Gary, your knees hurt when you stand for more than an hour. You're not painting Kevin's house. You're barely going to paint the shed." I stood there feeling a little foolish, because she was absolutely right. I was buying a tool for a version of myself that didn't exist anymore. I didn't actually need the compressor. I just wanted the familiar feeling of being the guy who needed the compressor. I wanted to feel like the guy who was still working hard. That's when I put the box back on the shelf, and we walked out of the store empty-handed. We got in the truck and drove home in silence. And that moment kind of shifted things for me. It really did. It started a whole chain reaction in my head over the next few weeks. I started realizing how much physical and mental stuff we were carrying around for no reason. So I want to go through 5 things I've noticed, things I wish someone had pulled me aside and told me, before I spent that entire first year stressing over the budget and the bank account. Just 5 honest observations about wanting less in retirement, and why it makes things better. The first thing I noticed is the difference between having more money and simply needing less. It took me a very long time to understand this. They are exactly the same thing. Look, we used to spend maybe $400 a month just on random stuff, gadgets for the house, clothes we didn't really wear anymore, tools I didn't really need, small things that just add up over the weeks. You go to the store for light bulbs. You come out with $50 worth of things you didn't plan on buying. We would buy a new rug for the hallway because the old one looked a little faded, or a new weed whacker because the old one was hard to start on cold mornings. When you stop wanting those things, it's like getting a permanent raise. I remember looking at our bank statement. It was after 6 months of not buying extra junk. There was an extra $2,000 sitting there, in the savings account. I hadn't worked a single hour for it. I hadn't invested in anything clever. I just hadn't spent it. I used to think I needed a massive nest egg just to feel safe. I thought I needed more income to survive. I spent nights staring at the ceiling worrying about inflation, worrying about the cost of gas going up, worrying about property taxes. But controlling your desires is a lot easier than trying to increase your fixed income. You don't have to out-earn your spending anymore. You just have to outsmart your wanting. I would sit on the porch and think about that. The math is incredibly simple. If you want less, you immediately have more. It is entirely instantaneous. There is no risk involved at all. You just walk past the tool aisle and you are instantly richer, which, I don't know if that's good or bad, honestly, but it works. And it gave me a sense of control. A control I hadn't felt since I closed the painting business. The relief of not needing to buy things was massive. It felt like I could finally breathe again. I stopped looking at the neighbors to see what they were buying, because it simply didn't matter to me anymore. I was playing my own game now. The second thing was dealing with all the stuff I already owned. I spent 40 years accumulating things. My garage was an absolute museum of good intentions. I had heavy aluminum ladders I couldn't safely climb anymore, not with my knees. I had canvas drop cloths and heavy commercial sprayers from the business. I had extension cords thick as a garden hose. They were just sitting there taking up space, gathering dust. Every time I parked the car, I had to squeeze past a pile of lumber I was saving for a project I was never going to do. One weekend, my youngest son, Todd, came over. Todd is the quiet one. He doesn't say much unless he has to. We started pulling things out onto the driveway. The sun was beating down. We were sweating. He asked me when was the last time I used a specific heavy-duty tile saw. I looked at it and told him 1998. We both just kind of laughed. It was ridiculous. I was holding on to it because getting rid of it felt like admitting I was getting old. Letting go of the tools felt like letting go of the guy who used them. It felt like a surrender. but getting rid of it actually just felt like pure relief. We sold a bunch of it on the internet, gave the rest away to a younger guy starting out in the trades. He came by in a beat-up truck and looked at my old gear like it was gold. That's when I figured out that your possessions take up mental space, not just physical space. Every time I looked at those tall ladders, I felt secretly guilty for not using them. I felt tired just looking at them. When the garage was finally empty, my head felt emptier too, in a very good way. You really don't realize how heavy your possessions are until you actively stop carrying them around. It felt like a physical weight lifted off the entire house. It felt like we finally had room to breathe. Then there's the whole trap of buying things to save time. When I was working, time was money. If a fancy new tool saved me an hour, it paid for itself. That was the rule I lived by. In retirement, time is the only thing you have an absolute abundance of. You have oceans of it. I bought a pressure washer once. I bought it because I had time and it was on sale at the hardware store. $200 lesson right there. I thought I was going to pressure wash the entire neighborhood. I thought I would be the hero of the block. I dragged the heavy box out of the truck. I set the thing up. I tangled with the heavy rubber hoses for 20 minutes. I finally got the gas engine running. It was incredibly loud. It smelled like exhaust. I used it for maybe a half hour on the driveway. My back started hurting almost immediately. The vibration went right up my arms and into my shoulders. Then I had to drain it. I had to clean the filter. I had to find a place to store it in the newly cleaned garage. The thing was a massive hassle. I ended up giving it to our daughter Cheryl. She lives a couple hours away. Her husband uses it now. He works in an office all week. He thinks pressure washing is fun. I let him have it. I don't need it. That's when I figured out that sometimes the work itself is the entire point. You don't need to optimize your life when you're not on the clock anymore. Sweeping the driveway with a regular $10 push broom takes longer, but it gives me a reason to be outside in the morning. It gives me a little light exercise. It lets me wave at the mailman. Buying a loud machine to steal my own chores doesn't make any sense anymore. I have nowhere else to be right now. And that's entirely fine with me. You stop rushing through the day just to get to the end of it. You just let the day take as long as it takes. The fourth thing is learning to stop fighting your own body. I spent a lot of money early on trying to feel like I was 50 again. I bought special knee braces from the pharmacy, the kind with the metal hinges. They just pinched my leg. I bought expensive joint supplements from a catalog that promised absolute miracles. I drank weird shakes. I even bought this weird massage gun thing I saw on the television late at night. It sounded like a jackhammer when you turned it on. Diane hated it. It actually scared the neighbor's dog through the wall. I was throwing money at the problem of getting older because I wanted my old stamina back. I wanted to work an 8-hour day in the yard and not feel it the next morning. One day I was sitting in the doctor's office for my annual checkup. The paper on the exam table was crinkling every time I moved. He asked how I was doing. I started complaining about my knees, complaining about how I couldn't work in the yard all day anymore, complaining about my lower back. He just looked at my chart. He looked over his glasses at me. He said, "Gary, you worked hard physical labor for decades. You climbed ladders. You carried heavy paint buckets. You crawled around on your hands and knees. Your knees are doing exactly what knees do when they are in their 70s. He said I was doing okay for my age, and I should probably just take that as a win. And I realized he was right. I was buying products to fight a battle I was never going to win. That's when I figured out that acceptance is entirely free. You don't have to buy anything to just accept your limits. Now, when my knees hurt, I just sit down on a chair. I don't rub $40 magic cream on them. I just rest. I stop expecting my body to perform like a machine. It saves a lot of money, and it saves a massive amount of frustration. The last thing is how your taste actually changes. I don't fully understand why, but the things that make me happy now are so incredibly simple. They are so cheap they are almost free. Diane and I go to the diner for breakfast. It's our regular place on the corner. We have been going there for 20 years. We know the waitresses. Sarah usually brings our coffee before we even sit down. We sit in the same exact booth near the window. We share a pot of black coffee. I get the eggs and toast. It costs maybe $15 with the tip. I sit on the porch in the afternoon. I read a book from the local library, usually a biography, nothing too heavy. We take walks around the neighborhood in the evening. Well, Diane walks every morning. She is healthier than me. She'd tell you that too if you asked. I keep meaning to join her. I haven't joined her yet. We also see the grandkids, Kevin's kids. Braden is 14. Kaylee is 11. I occasionally can't remember which grade Kaylee is in. I used to buy them expensive plastic toys to show them I cared. Now I just teach Braden how to hold a hammer properly. It costs absolutely nothing. But those quiet moments feel incredibly rich. When you stop looking for the next big, expensive purchase to make you happy, the small things get much louder. You actually taste the diner coffee. You actually notice the weather changing in the afternoon. You stop treating today like a waiting room for tomorrow. I used to think a good day meant getting a massive amount of work done or buying something brand new for the house. Now a good day is just a day where my knees don't hurt too much, a day where the coffee is hot, a day where Diane and I just sit and watch the neighborhood happen. It is very ordinary, but the ordinary is actually pretty great once you finally stop fighting it. You just settle into the rhythm of your actual life, and that is plenty. I'm not going to tell you it all worked out perfectly. Some months are definitely tighter than others. We still have to watch the bank account. When the property taxes are due, things get real quiet around the house. Some days I still look at hardware catalogs out of pure habit. I still get tempted by a new drill. Some days are just boring. I won't lie about that. You wake up and you have nothing to do and it feels strange. But mostly it's okay. More okay than I ever expected, honestly. We're not eating cat food in the dark. We're also not going to Italy on a cruise ship. We're just living quietly. And the crazy part is, I feel more secure now than I did when I was working, because I know exactly what enough looks like. Once you know what enough is, nobody can ever sell you anything else. You are completely free from all of it. And I think that's worth saying out loud. If any of this sounds familiar to you, leave a comment down below. I read them. I really do read all of them. Tell me about something you bought in retirement that you thought you absolutely needed, something you spent good money on, and something you ended up totally regretting later. Or tell me what you have finally let go of. What did you clean out of your garage that made you feel better? I find those stories more useful than you'd think. It really helps to know we're not all just figuring this out by ourselves in our own empty garages. It helps to hear what other people are dealing with on a daily basis. We are all going through the same exact transition, just trying to make the math work and find a little peace. Stick around if you want more of this kind of talk. That's what we do here. We don't do financial advice. We just talk about the real stuff. The stuff that actually happens when you stop working and start living on a fixed income. All right, that's all I've got for today. Take care of yourselves.